increase some of them exponentially as we come out of this.
And it's safe to say, and I know that this is your business, but you're still long office as a way of working. You've talked several times over the past few weeks about the power of people being together and those sorts of things. I think we're seeing that manifest even in our social lives. Just help me understand that a little bit.
So here's what I would say. Our view is that office space, after talking to virtually every company that we lease space to, that they're bringing their people back. The only reason some are saying we're actually not bringing back everyone right now is they don't have enough space to be able to have social distancing while that's important to bring everyone back. So they may be bringing back 50% of the people because of that. But eventually they're going to bring them all back. And I guess the point I would make, and I think this is in our company, but it's in other companies we talk to, the office is about the social interaction of people. It creates a culture in a business. The spontaneity and the collaboration that comes from an office is incredibly important to a business. And you can't create that by video conference. You can maintain it for a while, and that's what we've all done for a little while. But you really can't do that over the longer term. So offices are going to be incredibly important, as they were before. And in fact, today, Jason, we're actually leasing greater amounts of space to people than they had before because they want to accommodate all our people and get them back quickly. And so they're increasing their footprints versus taking less.
That's fascinating. Right? It can go either way, right, Jason? People can either, reduce their footprint and either have people out in the suburbs or working from home, or they can increase their footprint in the big cities to give everybody more space so that they feel comfortable. So that's, and listen, I've heard the death of major cities. How many times? How many times have we heard it?
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen. I just think we're going to have to figure out new ways.
I think cities are going to change. I think you're going to have, I was talking to some people on the heels of this conversation, because lots of people wanted to talk about what Bruce had to say. And, it's interesting. I think we're going to be living in a hybrid world. I just think about my experience this week alone, where it's like I spent a couple days in the office. Here I am. I'm doing the show, with you. I did the show with you yesterday in a totally different location.
Right.
Obviously different people's jobs require different things at different times. And, I do think, though, the structure of cities could change. One of the things we talked about later on in the conversation, prompted by an audience question, was, does the architecture and design of cities change? And this is something you've talked about, which is, do we move to a place where actually we want a little more space, so we need more walkable spaces, we need more space for outdoor dining, and so does that change the way cities look and feel? I think it's possible.
It's so funny. For the first time I went into our local supermarket just recently, which has been, was kind of a big thing for me because we've just stayed away. And it was, I got to say, it was a clean place to begin with. It was cleaner. It was really organized. There was more space, like the aisles were open, and you could only walk one way down. And I have to say, to some extent, maybe we need to rethink some of the way things are built, and on a grander scale, cities. I got to say, the city has gotten crowded. There's a lot more cars because of Uber and Lyft, and I'm not saying those need to go away because I think they have provided great services, but I think we need to think about, it's a walking city, and it's become much more difficult to do that. So let's figure that out.
Yeah, I think in order to do that, though, you got to figure out public transportation, and I have yet to take public transportation, so I can't judge it fully. But the reality is that has to be clean. I mean, it has to be clean beyond clean. And by all accounts, the MTA has done a great job. But the thing we have to worry about is large groups of people.
Right. Listen, and it's needed to be cleaner than what it's been.
Fair point.
Okay, I'm just going to put that out. And I know it's really tough when you think about, my husband and I were talking about the numbers that ride it on a daily basis when everything's normal. It's unbelievable, but it can be better. Yeah. And I think we need to figure that out. So fascinating to hear his conversation. And I think stay tuned, everyone, in terms of how things play out. But cities, I still love New York City. I love it.
Well, you and Bruce Flatt, your long cities, your long offices. So we'll see where that goes. Check that whole interview out out on BloombergLive.com. And for those of you listening in New York, D.C., and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues right here. If you're listening on 106.1 in Boston, Bay State Business, that's coming up next. Stick with us. It's Bloomberg Business Week.
News with us. At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda, the power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available on selected grades.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street, especially the expats. And that feeling of pride. Lots of people are rejoining now. It's easy, and we'd love to have you back. Go on, feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
From all of us at Thames Water, thank you for supporting our key workers. As the weather warms up, demand for our water is growing, so we need your help more than ever. From taking shorter showers to turning off your sprinklers, you can make every drop count, inside and outside your home, to keep taps flowing in your community. Just don't forget to keep washing your hands regularly in line with government advice. Be an H2O hero. Find out how at thameswater.co.uk/watersmart.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games and big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was, but he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen. To help keep you and your loved ones safe, TuneIn has the latest guidelines from the CDC. Indoor gatherings, wash your hands and don't touch your face. Stay at least 6 feet from people you don't live with. Wear a mask. Don't share food, toys, or other items, and avoid shared surfaces. Open windows for better ventilation. Try to avoid gathering indoors as much as possible. For the latest stories and updates on COVID-19, search Coronavirus News on TuneIn.
The world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Wednesday, June 24th. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all trading lower. Stocks are declining amid fears about the resurgence in virus cases in multiple states and how that potentially could hamper the economic recovery. Here's where we stand. S&P down 82 points, down 2.6%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 707, lower by 2.7%. NASDAQ is down 232. That is a drop now of just about 2.3%. Energy and real estate down more than 3.5% after data showed Florida and California set daily records for new cases, while Houston said its intensive care unit beds are at 97% of capacity. Travel stocks and other companies that have been climbing amid reopening optimism got hammered, with New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut now requiring visitors from virus hotspots to self-quarantine. 10 years up 9/30 seconds with a yield of 0.68%. Gold is down 0.2% now, $17.64 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 6%, $37.97 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude oil. Well, some of the other stories that we're following for you, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon says the stock market rally that's erased almost all of this year's losses can't be justified by the outlook for corporate profits. Speaking of the Bloomberg Invest virtual conference, he also said corporations' profit potential. He also, I should say, had this to say about the economic recovery.
My guess is that when you look at the shape of the recovery, the initial shape of it is going to look quite like a V. We had a very, very steep decline, and we are going to have, as we open back up, somewhat of an accelerated recovery.
Goldman Sachs shares lower today by 2.7%. Again, West Texas Intermediate crude down 5.8% among some of the energy names. ExxonMobil down 4.1%. BP lower now by 4%. EOG Resources down 5.7%. Pioneer Natural Resources lower by 3.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
In today's Bloomberg Business Week Economics, we want to look at the interesting and complicated and often problematic relationship between the Fed and asset bubbles. Great voice to have to talk about that. He put out some research. Joe Kalish is back with us. He is Chief Global Macro Strategist at Ned Davis Research, and he joins us on the phone from Sarasota, Florida. Joe, it is so good to have you back with us. How are you?
I'm doing well, Carol. Thanks for having me back.
Well, it's great to have you back. And, you know, it's interesting. We've heard from the Fed a lot lately, Jay Powell a lot, and certainly various Fed governors. You dig into, first of all, kudos and thank you, because you give props to our own Mike McKee here at Bloomberg News. And the question that he asked Jay Powell at the last press conference, why don't we kick off there? What kind of intrigued you about that question?
I thought Michael really zeroed in on some really critical questions that the Fed is going to need to grapple with, I think, longer term, and what we as investors need to grapple with and policymakers need to deal with. And essentially, you know, Michael asked two things. One was on the question of asset bubbles and whether the Fed's policies were helping to promote that, and the second one was as a consequence was the Fed therefore contributing to wealth inequality. There were a lot of questions at the press conference about income inequality, but Michael focused on the wealth inequality aspect. So I think both of those were really important questions to ask, and essentially, the Fed chairman said they really didn't have much choice if they weren't hitting their goals in terms of maximum employment and price stability. That they really couldn't be concerned with the level of asset prices, and he really kind of sidestepped the whole question about wealth inequality. But he also did. I think Michael was also asking about, financial stability, and I thought Chairman Powell's way of framing that was to go to the banks and say, well, the banks are much better capitalized, and that's true. But in other areas of the Fed's monetary policy report, they did flag some issues with households and businesses and non-bank financials. So, he sort of put a little bit more of a positive spin on it than was in the actual report.
Well, it's tricky, and it gets to the heart of what we've been talking, Joe, so much about here at Bloomberg, and in light of the virus, to be quite honest, and also what happened in Minneapolis and the killing of George Floyd. And again, we're talking about inequalities, racism in America, and we're once again having that discussion of wealth creation versus income, and where we're seeing the gaps. And there's a lot and a wide gap in America when it comes to who has the wealth and who does not, and you certainly get into that. Lots of questions about the Fed and central banks, U.S. central banks, and their role in creating bubbles. Your point is, we can learn from the past, and I guess the past has shown us that the Fed doesn't necessarily think a lot about the bubbles they're creating.
Well, they may be aware of them, but I guess they feel there's not much they can do about it. So the most famous one was the so-called irrational exuberance speech that former Fed Chairman Greenspan gave in December 1996. And at that time, the NASDAQ was around 1,200 or so, and eventually climbed to 5,000. So, I think the attitude on the part of the policymakers is that they really can't identify a bubble, and they'll just deal with the aftermath. And we had a very similar situation in the 2000s with the housing bubble, and the Fed was very slow to react to that. And then they kind of let asset prices go here up until the COVID crisis, and just let stock prices continue to rise and without much concern.
To be fair, though, and I know you listen to Bloomberg, I mean, as we've had many discussions, for a long time it felt like the Fed was the only game in town. And we've certainly seen relief come from the U.S. government, but the Fed was certainly looking at ways to calm the markets, make it easy to make sure that money was flowing throughout the economy, especially in the early days of the crisis and the shutting down of the economy. And so, is it fair to say that you at least understand kind of what the Fed is thinking about and what it's watching, and maybe what it kind of almost had no choice but to do and to make it and kind of set the path for potentially creating another bubble?
Well, the problem is they really didn't have a choice, because if they didn't do those things would be a whole lot worse.
Well, that's my point. That's my point. Exactly. That they didn't really have a choice, right?
They really didn't have a choice. They had to restore the functioning of the financial markets, number one, which I think they've done a pretty good job of doing that. And then because of the huge setback we had in the economy, you're actually restoring some wealth can be helpful in terms of spending, and that could help support the economy. So, I'm not saying it's not necessary. But my point was, in that the financial markets basically have a green light to go where they want to go, and the Fed is not going to come in and
stop it
and stop the party
and pop it. Well, and I just got about 30 seconds here, Joe. So, do you see a bubble and what that bubble might be at this point? Just quickly.
I think there's a limit on how much the Treasury rates can go down here. I think we've kind of explored where those lows were, not just in the U.S., but globally. And in terms of stock market valuations, I see those as more fairly priced. There's a measure I like to look at on a forward basis, looking at the triple B bond yields, and we're close to zero today on that equity risk premium. And we never went below that during the entire 2009 to 2020 bull market.
That's great. Yeah, that's great perspective. Joe, thank you so much. Nice to get some time with you on this Wednesday. Really appreciate it. Joe Kalish, he's Chief Global Macro Strategist at Ned Davis Research, joining us on the phone in Sarasota, Florida. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, Jason Kelly. Let's get back to world and national news headlines and back on over to Nancy Lyons in our D.C. studio. Hey, Nancy.
Hey, Carol. Well, if you plan to travel to New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, you'll need to quarantine if you're coming from a coronavirus hotspot. During a joint news conference with all three governors, New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo said anyone coming from a state with a positive test rate of 10% will need to self-quarantine for 14 days so they can prevent a resurgence in cases.
As of today, the states that are above that level are Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Washington, Utah, Texas.
The announcement comes as, of course, summer travel is picking up. Joe Biden has opened up his biggest polling lead of the campaign over President Trump, Bloomberg's Nathan Hager reports.
The latest New York Times Siena College poll puts Joe Biden 14 points ahead of the president, 50 to 36%.
I think there's a sense in the White House, and this poll underscores it, that if the election were held today, Trump would be in a lot of trouble. The reality, though, is that the election isn't going to be held today.
But as of now, Bloomberg's Kathleen Hunter reports the poll puts Biden ahead across most demographics other than registered Republicans and white non-college educated voters. The president does get a 50% approval rating on the economy, but he has low marks on handling criminal justice, the coronavirus, and race relations. Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
The International Monetary Fund has downgraded its outlook for the coronavirus-ravaged world economy economy, projecting a significantly deeper recession and slower recovery than it anticipated 2 months ago. The fund said today it now expects global gross domestic product to shrink 4.9% this year instead of 3%, which was predicted in April. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries.
Whether planes are landing or not.
Look, some of these are not going to keep open.
The coronavirus crisis will reduce passenger numbers by half.
Whether or not imports are arriving.
Are you revising your estimates upwards now?
We're still focused on Europe.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is urging consumers to go out and shop.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Haven't you guys missed the boat?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. Can the world reopen for business?
Give us a sense of how you're ramping up and taking care of folks on the ground.
What's the long-term impact?
Why will we not see a V-shaped recovery?
When will there be a cure or a vaccine?
How can you model that at a time when it's unclear whether we're going to see a resurgence in viruses?
The answers will emerge.
Can you give us a sense of timing?
And you'll find them here. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are
ploughing on, boxing up goods and rolling them out, shipping kettles,
instruments to kids,
art for walls,
treats to pets, shorts for sunny weekends,
to brighten up one British home at a time.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Listen. That's a dream. Everyone has them, jingling away in the back of our minds. And most of the time, that's where dreams stay. So easy to ignore. Anything can drown them out, and everything does. But at Honda, we listen to our dreams. We get right up close. And on really good days, they become reality. From 2022, Honda's mainstream cars will only be hybrid or electric. Honda, the power of dreams.
If you want to find out what the best laptop is for all those video conferences with your colleagues while sitting at your makeshift desk, you could ask an algorithm, or someone called Al, or Kai, or Rachel, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience.
Hey, you're chatting to Mackenzie here on Shop Live.
Isn't it nice to get advice from another human being? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Start the conversation now with Shop Live.
You always say the best thing you ever did was join up. I bet you don't get the same experiences in Civvy Street, especially the expats. And that feeling of pride. Lots of people are rejoining now. It's easy, and we'd love to have you back. Go on, feel the pride again. Search RAF Rejoiners.
Are you ready for the realist first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up,
DC? What's up, my brother?
Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season. Like the Ringer NFL show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr. and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
He does! Fabry wins it!
To standout stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. A tough day for the Bulls. Let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks under pressure today on virus trade and U.S. political worries. Dow is currently down 612 points. S&P's dropped 72. NASDAQ is lower by 200. The U.S. 10-year yield at 0.68%. Gold trading lower by 3. WTI crude futures fall 6%. And transports drop 242 points. Leaders to the downside in the Dow, Dow Inc., Boeing, and Disney. Note that nothing was in the green. And regarding the virus, Apple to reclose 7 stores in Houston on the spike in COVID-19 cases. California reported 7,200 new virus cases. That was their biggest daily jump. And New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut order visitors to quarantine. In other news, Canada was downgraded by Fitch, and Square announced food delivery options for online sellers. Wrapping things up, BlackBerry and KB Home report after the bell. Live from the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill, and to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type squawk, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, it's time for Bloomberg Green, and that is brought to you by PGIM. Outlast today's uncertainty with the long-term perspective of PGIM, the investment management business of Prudential. Find out more at pgim.com. Carol?
And Jason, in our weekly Bloomberg Green segment, we're going to take a look at the common traits that are often found in leaders who really, really move the needle when it comes to sustainability. So let's get right to that story. I feel like I love when we get to specifics. Emily Chasen is sustainability editor at Bloomberg News. She joins us on the phone once again in New York City. Emily, good to have you back with us. Tell us about this story. I'm just curious about, they said, okay, you're going to go talk to leaders and find out what's in common. Tell us how it came about and what you found out.
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me again, Carol. This is a really interesting topic right now because there's so much systemic change in the system right now. There's a pandemic, there's climate change, there's huge issues around inequality and social justice, and who are the types of leaders who can solve those problems and identify these issues sooner rather than later and pivot and make changes in that. So what we did was we talked to Russell Reynolds Association, which is a recruiter, and they have been looking at the traits of leaders at the companies that are sort of scoring the best on sustainability. That's companies like Unilever, companies like Hilton Hotels. They worked with the UN Global Compact to find those. And what they found was there were some traits that sort of make a sustainability leader and some traits they might be born with.
I have to just say, just kind of a call out and maybe a little flex for Jason and me, but we have talked to both the head of Hilton, Chris Nassetta, and Alan Jope of Unilever. So we have talked with them directly.
In the last month.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us a little bit more about what those traits are.
Yeah, so the first one they found was being a multi-level systems thinker and being able to incorporate systems thinking into your your leadership style, right? And then there were also people who wanted to actively include stakeholders in their talks and really, understand the issues of stakeholders and bring them in, not managing them, not telling them what to do, but to bring them in and bring them along. The other one was disruptive innovation and being able to challenge traditional approaches and cut through bureaucracy and sort of figure out where those trade-offs are between profitability and sustainability. And the last one was having sort of a long-term mindset. So they found these 4 ideas, and it wasn't necessarily that leaders were born with them. A lot of times maybe they were, but sometimes they'd wake up to them across the course of their career. Like they'd go through a transformative business opportunity and say, oh my gosh, wait, I can think differently about this.
Yeah, I mean, and man, as you said, we are seeing this so across the board right now in this moment, right? I mean, in this moment where a CEO isn't allowed to, or I shouldn't say it is allowed, isn't able to just like jet around the world and sort of hop from place to place. They're usually in one spot. They're having to deal with everything that's in front of them. And one of those things, obviously, are these big issues of equality, which demand a level of accountability and transparency that we just have not seen leaders subjected to in a long time, if ever, Carol.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. And there's another story in the terminal, and Emily, I don't know if you saw this too, but it talked about ESG investors, those who run ESG funds, and they're constantly saying to other companies and leaders like, hey, where's your diversity? Where's your sustainability? And now they're looking at their own firms and finding out, oh, wait, we're not doing so well on that mark. It's just kind of blows your mind. And it's great that I think people are finally really understanding what it means to be either diverse or sustainable. It has to be all the way around.
Yeah, it's definitely important to be authentic in all of these things and sort of walk the walk in addition to talk the talk. So we also talked to the Carlyle Group, which is out with its impact report this week on what they've been doing. And we asked them about, how are you seeing this in the real world? And they said that the management teams that really focus on where the world is going versus where it has been are the ones that are generating great financial performance.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, and I will say private equity in many ways, and Emily, you and I have talked about this before. We've been at some of the same conferences around investing, and, the private equity firms, for all of the slings and arrows that they take in many ways, they seem to have kind of gotten religion around impact over the past few years. You think about what KKR is doing, Carlyle, you mentioned, and others, and not to mention the ones who are very focused specifically on this, like Generation, which I know Al Gore shop, which you've spent some time with.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of them are focused on this right now. KKR actually had a deal this week on water. There's a lot of thinking about this thing. Look at those long-term trends. We want to tap into them right now, especially in private equity and especially in finding those leaders who can make the pivots necessary to build the infrastructure of the future.
Well, and not for nothing, but what the reason the private equity guys have gotten religion around this, as you well know, Emily, is because they can make a lot of money. And these executives that they can attract can make a lot of money. And so, not surprisingly, Hilton, not necessarily a sustainability play or an impact play, but private equity back. So really interesting. All right, Emily Chasen, thank you so much. Good to catch up with you, our sustainability editor for Bloomberg. Joining us on the phone from New York City. Sustainable leaders have these traits in common. Check that out on the Bloomberg or Bloomberg.com.
Pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, totally interesting.
But I think, you and I have talked about, too, about everybody, okay, let's do another focus group. Let's talk about the problem, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
This is getting down to, okay, what makes a leader a really great leader in creating a diverse workforce, a diverse supply chain? Like, let's get down to the specifics.
Like doing
How do you
stuff.
do it?
That's it. That's what creates it. Doing stuff.
There's our next T-shirt. Doing stuff.
Doing stuff.
Doing stuff.
Just do it. Just do good stuff. I had a boss a long time ago who said, just do good stuff. He didn't give any direction other than that, but that's what we went and did.
But it's a pretty clear message.
Yeah.
Just going to say.
Seems like it makes sense. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are off their lows in the final hour, but still on track for a sharply lower close. The Dow Industrials are down 681, the S&P 500 down 80, the Nasdaq down 224. For the first time in 34 years, a U.S. brand leads J.D. Power's study of new vehicle quality. Dodge shares the top spot with Kia. Chevy and Ram tied for third. The study is a watershed for Detroit automakers that have trailed Japanese brands for years. In another blow to Boeing 737 MAX, the FAA will require the grounded jet to be checked for a manufacturing defect on engine coverings that could lead to a loss of power. Inspections and repairs will be required before it's allowed to fly again. Mortgage rates are at record lows thanks to the Fed, but analysts say any further declines are unlikely to come from the central bank. They say they'd likely come from lenders, reducing the spread between market rates and what borrowers pay. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
COVID-19. On days when it seems there are nothing but questions.
What about the pandemic emergency purchase program in Europe?
What's the medical side of this?
We try to ask good ones.
How long until we have an answer on what drugs can help us fight this pandemic?
How do you think this has the potential to rattle markets?
Does that mean we should shut down?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
It's a rather controversial question being asked.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
If knowledge is...
Decisions. Clearing. Isn't it great? So much choice. But hey, listening to me on your desktop isn't getting anything done. You need to take this Wednesday evening by the scruff of the neck. Take this sunshine as an omen and carve your path to success, which begins just down the road in Southampton at Solent University. After 3 years here, you don't just get a degree. You get a ton of support, real-world experience and connections, and interview fuel. That's why we're in the top 25 for student satisfaction in the Complete University Guide. At Solent University, we're ready for the future. Apply now at solent.ac.uk/clearing.
At Honda, we believe in our ears. Listening can help solve some of life's biggest conundrums. For example, if a car breaks down and there's no one around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is yes. The new Jazz Hybrid will pinpoint your location automatically and send for help at the tap of a button. And with its personal assistant, you can find the answers to other conundrums like, where is a good vegan gluten-free pizza place with free parking? The new Honda Jazz. Hybrid and connected. Honda. The power of dreams. Connectivity subscription available in selected grades.
When you buy tech online and you want to make sure you get exactly what you need, would you rather talk to an algorithm? Or to someone called Al, or Derek, or Sanjay, or Sue, or one of our other tech experts on Shop Live, Curry's PC World's online video call experience?
Hi, I'm Ali. How can I help?
Isn't it nice to get expert advice from another human being before you buy? They're just a click away. Curry's PC World. Talk to our tech experts online with Shop Live.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
At Argos, our sale is on and so much more. Go online to shop our range of amazing deals, including tech, toys and home. And style up your home with up to half price on selected home and furniture. Visit our website to shop our full range of deals. With Argos, you're good to go. Subject to availability, conditions apply, sale ends 14th of July.
How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where our rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL and tune in to listen.
Live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 1061. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Messer along with Jason Kelly on this Wednesday. Coming up, we've got Dave Wilson. He's going to be back with his chart of the day. I'm ready for a little song. And
I got confused because for some reason in my mind I thought, are we talking to Dave next?
Listen, I understand. Everybody will understand very shortly why you've been a little crazy this week. And it's with a really good reason. So you just settle down. Do a couple of
I'm excited for Dave Wilson, though.
Do a couple of ohms, and then we'll get right back to you, Jason Kelly. Let's get to Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
All right. Well, hello there. We might need a couple of ohms in the next 28 minutes. Always gets kind of interesting, kind of treacherous, kind of interesting as to what happens between now and the close. Right now, let me give you the numbers. I'll give you the why in a moment. S&P is down 75. That's a drop of 2.4%. The Dow down 653, lower now by 2.5%. NASDAQ slumping 203, down now by 2%. 10-year up 930 seconds with the yield there of 0.68%. Of course, beyond the close, got to find out how Asian markets react tonight. Stocks are plunging as investors grow anxious that the resurgence in virus cases in many states will hamper the economic recovery. All 11 sectors of the S&P 500 index are down at least 1%. Energy and real estate down more than 3% after data showed Florida and California set daily records for new cases, while Houston said its intensive care unit beds are at 97% capacity. Travel stocks, other companies that have been climbing amid reopening optimism, are getting hammered, with New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut now requiring visitors from virus hotspots to self-quarantine. So it is a down day. Coronavirus concerns helping stocks lower. Lauren Sauer is an assistant professor of emergency medicine at Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and on Bloomberg Television this morning she told us you cannot underestimate the importance of masks.
We're learning more and more about masks every day. We're seeing the efficacy. We're seeing that my mask protects you, that your mask protects me, and that all the masks protect the vulnerable people in our community, and that they're an important public health measure. When we still don't have a lot of options for we have no vaccine, we don't have a lot of therapeutics, masks are a critical tool in our toolkit.
The Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health is supported by Michael R. Bloomberg, founder of Bloomberg LP and Bloomberg Philanthropies. Detroit automakers dominated J.D. Power's marquee study of new vehicle quality for the first time, with Fiat Chrysler Automobiles Dodge becoming the first domestic brand to lead the rankings in 34 years. Among some of the automakers, Fiat Chrysler lower today by 4.5%, GM down 3.3%, Ford shares slumping now by 3%. Gold down 0.1%, 17.76 the ounce. We have got the price of crude oil down 6.5%, 37.76 on a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Again, recapping, S&P down 74, a drop of 2.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg.
Okay. That's so funny. He came up in one of those BuzzFeed lists about like couples.
Steven Tyler?
Yeah, Steven Tyler. Couples who have like a huge age gaps, and I think he's like dating somebody who's like 21.
Oh, good Lord.
Maybe it's not that young.
All right.
Anyway.
We'll Google that during the next break. Dave Wilson here with us, back in the saddle again. What is Steven Tyler doing when it comes to the chart of the day?
Well, it's all about how growth stocks are back in the saddle in the U.S. market, specifically within the S&P 500. You know, the faster growing companies, if you look at earnings or sales or gauges like that, you know, they went through a bit of a slump not long ago relative to value stocks, the ones that tend to be relatively cheap by comparison with earnings or sales or asset values. But that's turned around in a big way. Just take a look at the relationship between the S&P 500 growth and value indexes. That's what the chart focuses on. You know, if you looked over a 10 trading day period, so basically 2 weeks, The ratio between them fell about 6.5%. Since then, it's up about 10%. Actually, even higher today because growth stocks haven't fallen as much as value stocks, at least those within the S&P 500. But what the chart does to try and bring some perspective to the party, you might say, is to look at what's happened to the ratio over time, basically going back to a low from last November and comparing that with what you saw in 1999-2000 as the dot-com era. The internet stocks driven rally was reaching its peak. And you're pretty much following the same track now. In fact, through yesterday, the ratio was up 31% from its November low. And if you track, the index, the ratio to its high in March 2000, over a comparable time period, it was up 28%. So it just shows you how much growth stocks are dominating the party here. And, if you're concerned that we're back at 2000 and potentially headed for losses, this is one thing that might point you in that direction. If you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Yeah, interesting, right? Yeah. But it's kind of, we've talked about this, right? Dave, in terms of where investors are interested. And it certainly is it makes, the companies that are showing growth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way it's been working for some time now. And though we had this sort of brief flirtation, you might say, with value stocks, that's definitely turned around. John Authors actually wrote about this sort of reversal in his latest column, which is out today. And I know we have a story looking at how the growth in value stocks have fared lately on the Bloomberg terminal, which presumably is on Bloomberg.com as well. So there are a couple of pieces of reporting that kind of fit with the theme of this chart.
All right, Dave Wilson, we will catch up with you just after the close of trading for your stock of the day. We should point out we are awaiting some comments from President Trump and the President of Poland, I believe.
Yes.
They're from the Rose Garden, and we will take you there when that kicks off.
Right, a bilateral meeting. So, we can't forget that despite our focus, of course, understandably on the virus and other things, the government, of course, continuing on with its normal, activities. And that includes meetings with other officials. So we'll take you live to the Rose Garden as soon as that begins. In the meantime, we're going to count everybody down to the closing bell. What were you going to say?
We are indeed. I was just going to say, looking forward to the next hour, too, when we're going to catch up with the Dean of the Stanford University School of Medicine, as well as the CEO of Stanford Healthcare. So both those gentlemen joining us to talk about fighting COVID-19, also opening a new hospital in the midst of all this.
Yeah, talk about timing. So we'll see what they have to say. And then we're going to talk with a well-known activist. She's been on Wall Street for a long time. I'm looking forward to that conversation. That's going to be in our 5 p.m. Wall Street time hour. Right now, though, let's get another check on world and national news headlines. Here is Nancy Lyons in our 99.1 newsroom in the nation's capital. Hi, Nance.
Hey, Carol. A Republican policing reform measure collapsed in the Senate today when Democrats lined up to block it, saying it was an inadequate response to nationwide calls for action. After the vote, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer questioned Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's motives.
This bill lost because it was woefully inadequate. It never would have passed, and McConnell provided no path to improve it. So it was going to lose. The minute he put it together, and the more cynical among us would say that's why he did it.
McConnell says Democrats are engaging in political nonsense. President Trump is on track to be the first president since Richard Nixon to go a full first term without selecting a black nominee for a federal appeals court. Just one of Trump's 53 confirmed appeals court judges is Hispanic. None are black. Bloomberg Law took a look at the data from Federal Judicial Center and found blacks made up 27% of President Barack Obama's nominees. Former Democratic presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg just appeared on Bloomberg television and says he's certain that Joe Biden will name a running mate that will complement the former vice president.
His team is doing an extraordinary level of diligence to make sure that someone is identified who has the right leadership qualities, the right chemistry with the next president, and, of course, that all-important ability to do the job at a moment's notice.
But a judge also says we need a president who will build alliances instead of dismantling them. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nancy Lyons.
All right, Nance, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Wednesday. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. It is time to count you down to the closing bell. Aaron Kennan is back with us. He's co-founder and chief executive officer at Clear Harbor Asset Management, back with us once again on the phone from Greenwich, Connecticut. Aaron, good to have you here with us. You know, we've been talking with you certainly throughout the year and throughout this crisis. I don't know, how has your outlook on the markets, on the economic rebound maybe changed over the last few months?
Well, great to be back, Carol. Thank you. Well, let's see. I mean, certainly we are going through a period where there's this huge divergence, right, between the equity markets and the real economy. Now, that's not necessarily a new thing, but the degree to which we're seeing a divergence is quite significant, meaning that, you know, the equity market tends to be a discounting mechanism. It tends to recover or start to recover ahead of a recovery in the real economy. But, you know, to come 39%, not including today, you know, off of that March 23rd low is quite significant. I think there's a lot of optimism built in the equity markets. And when we, you know, sort of look at the divergence even within the equity market, I think it really details a tale of two stories. The technology piece is in a bull market, and the financial piece is very much in a bear market. And I think that's really sort of proven itself out, maybe perhaps since we last spoke.
And so where does it go from here, do you think, Aaron?
Well, I think as we wade through this crisis, it's going to be long. There are going to be a lot of speed bumps, Jason. And I believe that, you know, the technology sector is an asset-light sector that's focused on providing productivity to their clients, to their corporations. In this period of future deglobalization, where you're going to have supply chains moving all around the world, technology is going to play a key role in that effort. I think companies with strong balance sheets, with strong management and strong capital allocators more generally, are going to capture some market share during this crisis. They have been capturing market share during this crisis and will be even stronger as we come out the other side. So I think that trend continues, and the real question in our minds at Clear Harbor is, well, what about valuations? And technology valuations have become, you know, quite lofty across the board. And but, you know, you look at the banks, and they're in a bear market. Net interest margins are collapsing. Loan growth is certainly a problem, and the credit picture is being buttressed by the Fed. So, yeah, go ahead.
No, you know what I was thinking, Aaron, though, listening to you, what you said about technology, and I certainly agree with you, but I got to say, I look at my world, and increasingly, I mean, Jason and I are doing our radio show because of technology, and everybody is working at home because of technology, and I feel like despite what the outlook is, if there's any one consistent theme that we can count on, and I know it's been what's propelled the markets higher, you know, coming off the crisis, but it is technology.
Absolutely. So I would be in complete agreement with that, and I think, you know, we do have points of concern across the economy. I mean, certainly if you look at the S&P 500 as in its entirety trading at, you know, pick your number, but it probably best case 24 times 2021 earnings. So that's a lofty multiple. Corporate debt loads are high. We saw that, you know, record high yield issuance this month. And you know, that's all very much supported by Fed policy around the fallen angels. Unemployment, I think, is a huge question mark. And I've been hearing a lot about the rise in the savings rate. It's at a record. I don't think we saw a savings rate spike like this in our entire lifetime.
Right.
And some view that as a positive, that there's cash on the sidelines.
Well, you know, can I just jump, because Jason and I talked about this yesterday. You know, as our reporting, Ben Steverman put out a story that, you know, yay, that Americans have some money on the sidelines, but there is still consistently, you know, research showing that most Americans out there don't even have enough money to deal with, like, a car bill of $400. Like, that money on the sidelines, some people are going to have to live on that. And I know...
Well, that's right. That's absolutely right. And the money on the sidelines is it an indication of optimism, or is it an indication of anxiety?
Right.
And what will be the catalyst for altering that anxiety level?
And so, you mentioned the Fed, Aaron, and I feel like history will be very kind. I've said this on this program before, to Jay Powell and his cohorts for what they have done. Don't fight the Fed, obviously, has been one of the mantras that we've heard over and over again from both institutional and individual investors. What do you think the Fed can and should do next, or what can we expect them to do next?
Well, I think they're going to continue to provide, call it stimulus, monetary growth for as far as the eye can see. And I think the fiscal side, particularly heading into a presidential election, will do the same. So expect another fiscal stimulus package 4.0 coming along next month. But I also think the Fed is stuck because they're trying to weaken the dollar. They would never say that, but they are. But the world is faced with this COVID crisis. It's not just a U.S. economic slowdown.
Right.
And so it's difficult, for the U.S. dollar to, which is a flight to quality currency along with the yen, to depreciate here in the midst of this global uncertainty. And I think that's one point of real frustration for the Fed right now.
Do you think the Fed's creating another bubble? And this just piggybacks on a conversation that we had with Joe Kalish earlier at Ned Davis Research. And, the Fed doesn't, they're doing what they can to help out this economy, but as a result, maybe not so concerned about bubbles. They haven't been in the past. Do we need to be concerned about that, Aaron?
Well, I think the Fed is caught between a rock and a hard place. Certainly they're creating some bubbles. Some are maybe identifiable now, and some will be identifiable later. But that isn't to say that the Fed policy to try to sort of keep this economy afloat, which was sort of a government-induced initiative to close down the economy, is not warranted. I think the Fed is in a very difficult position, but they have a lot of firepower, and I think they'll continue to provide liquidity. And will liquidity allow for insolvency rates to decline? I think that's a big question, and only time will tell on that.
All right, Aaron Kennan, thank you so much. We're going to leave it there. Co-founder, CEO of Clear Harbor Asset Management, joining us on the phone from Greenwich. Carol?
Yeah.
We are awaiting some comments from the president.
We are indeed. He is having a bilateral, or has had a bilateral meeting with the president of Poland. And so he is expected, the two of them, to make some comments in the Rose Garden and also take some questions from the press community. So as soon as they do, they are beginning now. So let's go to the Rose Garden.
This is the third time that we've hosted President Duda. The First Lady and I also cherish our remarkable visit to Poland 3 years ago. That was an amazing event. We had an event because it was a speech, and a lot of people watched that speech. But it was a very historic moment and an important moment for our two countries. The American and Polish people enjoy one of the world's oldest, strongest, and most enduring friendships. Polish patriots battled by our side to secure American independence. American and Polish warriors fought and died together to defeat the Nazis. In World War II, the United States stood shoulder to shoulder with Poland in its courageous struggle against communist oppression. Our bond has been forged in battle, sealed in blood, and strengthened by our shared cultural values. The United States and Poland are united by our firm conviction that Western civilization has advanced, really, and very much advanced. I think I have to add the cause of human progress beyond measure, and that it must be strongly defended and will at all times be strongly defended, and we will defend it together. In our meeting today, President Duda and I reaffirmed the vital alliance between our nations. Last year, we signed 2 joint declarations to increase our security collaboration, and we look forward to signing a defense cooperation agreement. Poland recently purchased 32 brand new state-of-the-art F-35 fighter jets, the best in the world. And Poland is one of only 8 NATO members. The others, some of them haven't done so well in terms of what they're supposed to be paying to NATO. I tell them all the time, and we've gotten them up a lot, but not enough. But Poland is one of only 8 that is current with the money that they are supposed to be paying. That's the 2%. 2% is a very low number, but we have a large number of countries that haven't paid. They're delinquent, let's put it that way. They're delinquent with respect to their dues, the money they're supposed to be paying for defense. So the United States is defending a lot of countries that are delinquent on what they're supposed to be paying, and I never feel too good about that. But I will say I spoke with the Secretary General And he said, we've done a great job. But I said, we haven't done good enough. We haven't done a good enough job. We have secured, though, over $400 billion in new pledged defense spending from NATO members, which is something that no other administration has come even close to. I would say they're off by many, many hundreds of billions of dollars, something the newspaper doesn't like writing about, that the media doesn't like talking about. But we will be only satisfied when all members are paying their fair share. Again, only 8 members plus the United States is paying what is considered a fair share. I also applaud Poland and the Polish people for its devotion to safeguarding their country's borders, very strong borders. And I just left our border, by the way. The wall is moving along rapidly, and our border is about as strong as it's ever been, our southern border. Last year, we were able to add Poland to the visa waiver program, and they wanted that very badly, and we gave it to them because they really deserve it. It's a testament to Poland's vigilant efforts to uphold the rule of law. The United States and Poland have recently signed several long-term contracts for U.S. liquefied natural gas. They're a big purchaser of our energy to enhance Poland's energy security. And we're working to conclude an agreement that would facilitate Poland's development of nuclear energy plants throughout the purchase. They're going to be purchasing with one of our very big, very good companies, technology to do civilian nuclear energy. I want to congratulate Poland for its leadership in the 3 Seas initiative, a crucial energy partnership that will provide a reliable source of energy for Eastern Europe, and it will be free from the threat of foreign extortion. Poland understands foreign extortion very well. The 3 Seas initiative relies on fairness, transparency, and mutual benefit. Our nations have also collaborated on protecting our critical infrastructure and technology. That's why we've signed a 5G joint declaration, and Poland is leading the way in Europe by using trusted providers and provider equipment and supply chains for its 5G network, and we're working along with them, and they're using our companies. The United States and Poland cooperate across the truly wide range of fronts that we're both very much involved in. Here today is the head of a Polish medical team, very advanced team, very brilliant team fighting the coronavirus alongside of American doctors, Captain Shevera. Captain, thank you very much for being here, Captain. And we're making great progress. I hear we're making great progress, and we're working together, but we are making great progress on therapeutics and vaccines. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. The American and Polish people have been true friends and trusted partners for almost 250 years. We're forever united by our shared belief in family, faith, law, liberty, democracy, and justice. As the old Polish motto goes, we will stand together in the name of God for our freedom and for yours. President Duda, let me express once again our gratitude for your visit and friendship. We have had a very, very special relationship. Our alliance is powerful and a very powerful testament to what free people can achieve together. And I believe that the greatness of our relationship lies ahead. Thank you very much. President, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Szanowni Państwo.
Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, I would like to thank very warmly to President Donald Trump, to the President of the United States of America. Thank you very much for inviting me here to Washington, to the White House, to take part in this very important meeting to us. This meeting is important for many reasons. To me, as President of the Republic of Poland, this meeting is important because Poland is the first country after the coronavirus pandemic which has been invited to the meeting in the White House to discuss the most important matters concerning the future, concerning how the relations will look between the United States and Poland in terms of economy, what those relations will be like in the military sphere, and what those relations will be like in the sphere of health protection, all those elements which are of key importance today. A very big part of our discussions today with Mr. President and our collaborators, we're dedicated to the coronavirus, to what the situation looks like in Europe and on the global stage as concerns fight against the coronavirus, also in the United States. But first and foremost, we're also thinking about what measures to take in the future. But first and foremost, thank you so much, Mr. President, for your declaration that we are going to cooperate, that also our scientists are going to cooperate and collaborate on conducting research concerning the vaccine and therapy drug against coronavirus, everything that will be conducive to fighting the coronavirus. So I do believe, thanks to this collaboration, those therapeutical medicines will be available also for Poles, for my compatriots, as soon as possible. Thank you so much, President, for that, because all of us know very well how high level of medical research is in the United States. And this declaration and the will of cooperation on part of the United States, on part of the President of the United States, is of crucial importance to us. So thank you very much for that. But ladies and gentlemen, we also discussed the cooperation in the sphere of economy and military. Let me first mention our economic cooperation. As the President has just mentioned, we are developing it both in the sphere of energy, in building energy security. Today we can say that the United States is cooperating in the sphere of creating energy security, not only the energy security of Poland, but also the energy security of Central Europe. The President has just mentioned the 3 Cs initiative. Yes, all the investments that are being carried out in Poland today, the extension of the capacity of LNG terminal in Świnoujście, we're increasing its capacity by 2.5 billion cubic meters. We also plan to construct another LNG terminal in the port of Gdańsk. All of that is conducive to being able to receive LNG gas and provide its deliveries not only across Poland, but also for the countries of Central Europe. The vast majority of those countries of Central Europe are still dependent on Russia, and creating a true alternative, in other words, diversification of supplies, is of key importance for their security. Thank you, Mr. President, for this cooperation. I do believe that we're going to further develop it. Today we have got those supplies guaranteed until 2023, by the end of 2023, but I know that we are also going to enter into further contracts in this respect. Even more so that for sure our demand is going to increase. But, ladies and gentlemen, we also discussed conventional energy and nuclear energy cooperation. In the nearest future, an agreement will be signed between the governments of the United States of America and the Republic of Poland. And thanks to this agreement, we'll be able to start designing the large design of introducing conventional nuclear energy for the production of electricity in Poland. The entities which will participate in this project have already been selected, and the agreements are very advanced. On the Polish side, we have got Minister Piotr Naimski, who is in charge of those negotiations right now. An appropriate intergovernmental agreement is about to be concluded, finalized. We can expect that to happen in the near future. But, ladies and gentlemen, I also want to mention the contribution of the United States into the 3 Cs initiative, and first and foremost, the financial contribution to the fund of the 3 Cs initiative. Mr. President got interested in that fund some time ago. This is an element, a vehicle, which enables the development of this cooperation. Thank you, Mr. President, for your activity, and thank you for appreciating this cooperation which takes place in Central Europe within the framework of the European Union. And the goal of this cooperation is to develop, to extend the infrastructure. Thank you for noticing the possibility of developing cooperation in the transatlantic zone between the countries of the European Union and the United States. And, of course, from my point of view, this cooperation with Poland is extremely important to me. But also in the economic sphere, we're speaking about increasing military cooperation between Poland and the United States. It is also of primary importance. I have no doubts whatsoever that this cooperation will lead to the strengthening of security of the European Union, strengthening the security of the eastern flank of NATO, but also, and perhaps first and foremost, from my perspective, it will strengthen the security of Poland. And it will also lend additional financial credibility to Poland, investment credibility on the part of American investors. 1 month ago, a global company, Microsoft, announced that they're going to invest $1 billion in Poland to establish a state-of-the-art data center. And today, officially, Google company published the information that is also going to invest in the Center of Modern Technologies in Poland, including IP.
All right, so you are listening, of course, to a live press conference in the Rose Garden between the Polish president and President Trump. We'll get back to that in just a moment. In the meantime, the closing bell happening on Wall Street on this Wednesday. day in equities, finishing just off their lows of the session. S&P 500, though, it's been a down day, down 2.6%, 80 points to the downside, closing at 3,050. Dow Jones Industrial Average at a close of 25,447. That's a loss of 708 points, or down 2.7%. The best performer, but still down, is the NASDAQ, a decline of 2.2%, down 222 points, with a decline of 9,909 points. All right, that's your look at the closing day on Wall Street. Let's get back to the press conference between President Trump and the Polish president in the Rose Garden.
With these very serious challenges, also as far as the intellectual capital is concerned, I'm sure that these investments are going to be beneficial for the United States, for the U.S. companies, and also for Poland, through creating jobs, through acquiring new experiences by young people in the first place, by young engineers. I'm also glad, Mr. President, because, as we said before, the agreements that we entered into concerning increased U.S. military presence in Poland, the agreements we signed last year, according to the first one, the U.S. forces are going to be increased by 1,000 troops in our country, and another agreement stipulated concrete locations in which U.S. soldiers will be stationed in Poland on a rotational basis, but also it's going to be heel-to-toe rotation. Today, we are entering another stage. Namely, there is a possibility of further increase in American troops in our country. In recent days, I also talked to Secretary General of NATO. I talked to Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, and we agreed on one point. Especially as Europeans, we have no doubts whatsoever that if any part of the U.S. armed forces, which is the biggest armed forces in the world, was withdrawn from Europe, that would be very detrimental to European security. So, in our belief, it is deeply justified to ensure that the U.S. troops are left in Europe. So, Mr. President, thank you so much for this meeting today. Thank you so much for accepting Poland during this meeting at the White House. So we are the first country which has been received after this long break in international diplomacy. Thank you for your words about our pride and heroism of Poles over history. Today, Polish soldiers stand arm in arm with U.S. soldiers. We are tested allies. Together we spilled blood in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we stand ready, always ready, to implement our allied obligations and commitments. And thank you that the United States, thanks to your policy, Mr. President, is demonstrating itself as an absolutely loyal ally to us. And thank you that we can count on the United States. Also, I'd like to say that I'm grateful, Mr. President, that you have been stressing historical truths in such a decisive way. This is extremely important to us Poles. Fighting disinformation, defending historical truth, also about the Second World War, about who started the war, about the course of the war, is incredibly important to us. And thank you, Mr. President, that you are adopting this stance and contributing so much to putting the record straight. It's important also to us from the point of view of our dignity. The Second World War was a period of great drama and trauma in the history of our nation. We lost 5 million citizens, and that was a tragedy to us. So because of that, it is important to spread this truth, to present it as it really was. But it's also important to speak about the heroism of Poles, wherever they were fighting, wherever they were spilling their blood, arm in arm with their allies at Monte Cassino, at Tobruk, and at other places all over the world, both on the Eastern Front and on the Western Front. All of that, saying that, is extremely important. So I'm happy that today we can anchor our security in the United States. I'm glad that we have got this excellent economic cooperation. So, Mr. President, I have no doubt whatsoever that the coronavirus pandemic will pass, and we will be going together towards the development of our countries, towards the development of our societies, towards the building of a better, more prosperous future, both for the United States, for Poland, and for Europe. Thank you so much.
We'll ask one to me and one to the President, and that would be great. Steve Holland, go ahead.
Poland, would you send them from Germany, and what sort of signal would that send to Russia? And for President Duda, how do you feel about this, taking some troops out of Germany to go to Poland, and what signal does that send to Russia? Thank you.
Well, just to start, as you know, Poland is, as I've said many times, Poland is one of the few countries that are fulfilling their obligations under NATO, in particular their monetary obligations. And they asked us if we would send some additional troops. They're going to pay for that. They'll be paying for the sending of additional troops, and we'll probably be moving them from Germany to Poland. We're going to be reducing Germany very substantially down to about 25,000 troops. We actually had 52,000, but we'll be moving it down to about 25,000. Germany's paying a very small fraction of what they're supposed to be paying. They should be paying 2%, and they're paying a little bit more than 1%, depending on how you calculate. You could also calculate that they're paying less than 1%. But if you assume they're paying 1%, that's a tremendous delinquency. Let's use that word, delinquency. So we're going to be reducing our forces in Germany. Some will be coming home and some will be going to other places, but Poland would be one of those other places in Europe.
Would send to Russia by doing this?
I think it sends a very strong signal to Russia, but I think a stronger signal sent to Russia is the fact that Germany is paying Russia billions of dollars to purchase energy from Russia and through the pipeline. And I'm saying, what's that all about? You're spending billions of dollars to Russia, then we're supposed to defend you from Russia. So I think it's I think the people of Germany are very unhappy about it. I have many friends from Germany, and the people in Germany are very unhappy about it. They don't like it, but that's what they chose to do. So they're spending billions of dollars to buy Russian energy, and then we're supposed to defend them from Russia. So that doesn't work too well. But Poland has been very, very terrific. In fact, I don't believe Poland is actually accepting any of the energy from the pipeline from Russia. So that sends a signal right there. With all of that being said, we expect to get along with Russia. We expect to get along with everybody. But Germany they really owe a lot of money in NATO, and this has been going on for many years. When you add it all up, you're probably getting close to $1 trillion. And that's not treating NATO fairly, but it really isn't treating the United States fairly. You know, the United States is the major participant in NATO. We pay more than anybody else by far, have for many, many years. So we defend Europe, but Europe also takes tremendous advantage of the United States on trade. Advantage like you wouldn't believe. So we're trying to work that out, and I would imagine they'd like to wait till after the election so that maybe they could deal with somebody other than President Trump. But after the election, they'll just have to pay more. But that's the way it is, okay? Thank you very much, please.
Sir, first of all, I do respect very much both Mr. President Donald Trump and the United States of America, a wonderful, great state, which today is the largest military and economic superpower in the world. And I wouldn't dare say to the President of the United States of America where he should send his soldiers, because this is the decision which is always taken by the United States. This is a very responsible decision. However, I do not deny that I requested, Mr. President, that he would not withdraw U.S. forces from Europe, because the security of Europe is very important to me. From Europe as such, I'm talking about the United Europe, for which the American presence since the end of the Second World War is a huge security guarantee. However, if I'm asked by anybody if I am ready that Poland receives more U.S. troops in our country, of course I am ready. In 2014, Russia attacked Ukraine. It annexed Crimea. It occupies Lugansk and Donetsk. Before that, it had attacked Georgia. 2014 was a year of huge fears in the Baltic states, and very big ones, very considerable ones among the Polish society. Today, the presence of NATO troops and first and foremost of U.S. troops in Poland demonstrates that Article 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty is treated seriously. And it shows that if anyone wanted to attack Poland, it won't be a soft landing for that entity. That won't pay off. for such an aggressor, because the strongest army of the world is present, and they would help Polish soldiers to defend our borders if such a case arises. 100 years ago, we repelled Russians from Warsaw. In a great battle in 1920, we defeated the Soviet army Bolsheviks, and we drew them back to the east. That was a great victory, but we managed to stop them only very near to Warsaw, at the outskirts of our capital city. We would never want to see the situation repeated again. That is why the Allied presence is crucially important to us today, and it is a very important security guarantee to us. So I'm very pleased that both within NATO as well as in the United States, and today the President of the United States understands the history of Europe, and he understands the realities in Europe, and that he also understands the situation as it is developing in Europe. So today this generates peace to my country. It brings security, and thanks to that, Russian, unfortunately, very strong imperial ambitions, which have been revived over the last tens of years, I can say, because Georgia was attacked in 2008. Thanks to this, those ambitions have been stopped for the time being, at least in this part of the world. And I have no doubt whatsoever that this is also a huge merit of the policy of the United States. I'm grateful for that, just like all my compatriots are.
I want to add 2014, which the president was talking of. That was a year where Russia had a good time with the United States. To the best of my knowledge, President Obama and Sleepy Joe Biden, they were in power. They were the ones that were doing it. This was before us. Hasn't happened with us, and it won't happen with us either. Please go ahead.
Pan redaktor Marcin Wrona, bardzo.
Marcin Wrona.
President, you had to cancel your last trip, your last visit to Poland because of the hurricane. Are you planning a new visit to Poland in the near future? And the second question is on COVID. Is there a chance for Poland to participate in the development and early access, both to the vaccine and to the therapeutics? Panie prezydencie, czy jest szansa na to, że podczas tej współpracy...
Mr. President, is there a chance that during this cooperation the United States will get fast access both to the vaccine as well as to concrete drugs against coronavirus?
And we'd like to do it again as soon as we can. We have an election happening in this country, as you probably have heard, and so I probably won't be able to do it until after the election, but assuming things go well, the answer is a very definite yes, actually. As far as the joining with us on the vaccines, and therapeutics, by the way, because the therapeutics to me, if you gave me a choice right now, probably therapeutically, maybe I'd like that even better, but we're working very well on both. I think we're coming up with some great answers. I think you're going to have a big surprise, a beautiful surprise, sooner than anybody would think. But the answer is yes, we will be getting Poland involved, both in terms of helping, but also in terms of taking care of the Polish people once we have the vaccine. But I think we're going to have it very soon. Okay? Thank you.
Panie redaktorze,
Sir, we got involved as a state in the cooperation and also in supporting allies, be it in a symbolic dimension of the United States in the fight against the coronavirus. That is why we have here with us today a captain, medical doctor, from Poland. I want to say, yes, of course, I'm working on this obvious assumption that by taking part in the research and also by being, in a certain sense, co-creators of the vaccines and therapeutics, Poles will be able to count on these vaccines and therapeutics to be available for the Poles as soon as possible. So, speaking openly, this is also the intention I have in my cooperation with the United States of America to make sure that these vaccines are available to Poles and to other nations wherever they will be applied as soon as possible.
Okay. Thank you very much. John, please.
This afternoon, the bill on reform in the Senate failed to move forward. It may still see the light of day at some point, but at the moment it's stalled in the Senate. As well, you have an executive order that is coming out later on this week regarding monuments, what to do about people who deface or damage these monuments. Could you tell us what you're planning to do in the executive order and your reaction to what happened in the Senate?
Well, the Senate Republicans want very much to pass a bill on police reform. We have total cooperation with many different communities, including the police community. They want it very much to happen themselves because there are things that they agree to that they would like to agree to, and they would love to have it agreed to formally. The Democrats don't want to do it because they want to weaken our police. They want to take away immunity. They want to do other things that you know about as well as anybody in this beautiful field that we sit. They want to take away a lot of the strength from our police and from law enforcement generally, and we can't live with that. We can't live with that. This is a great bill, strongly endorsed by, as you know, Tim Scott, who's terrific, who is a terrific man, great senator, South Carolina, and Mitch wants it to happen. I would like to see it happen, but we won't sacrifice. We won't do that. We won't do anything that's going to hurt our police. The police, we have a record this year on crime, a record positive rating on crime this year, the best. And you hear about certain places like Chicago, and you hear about what's going on in Detroit and other cities, all Democrat run. Every one of them's Democrat run. 20 out of 20. The 20 worst, the 20 most dangerous are Democrat run. We have one city or two cities in particular, worse than Honduras, worse than Afghanistan. And these are cities within the United States, Democrat run, radical left run. You see what's going on in Seattle. You see what's going on in other places. Seattle of all places. Who would even think that's possible? 20 out of 20. The Democrats want to weaken very substantially our law enforcement and our police. And frankly, they want to defund largely, at least largely. There are some that want to defund and abolish our police, if you can believe that. And we're not letting that happen. So if nothing happens with it, it's one of those things. We have different philosophies. They want open borders. They want sanctuary cities. We don't. As far as your second question, I think that we're going to have a very strong executive order, but we already have very strong. We have the Monuments Act already, which means 10 years in jail. But I think we're going to consolidate various things. We're going to come out with a very strong executive order, and I should have that by the end of the week, which is fast approaching. We're going to have it a very powerful statement. We've arrested numerous people, as you know, for what took place outside of Washington. In addition, the FBI is investigating hundreds of people throughout the country for what they've done to monuments, statues, and even buildings. So we have very strong laws already on the books. I mean, we have a law that's 10 years. It's 10 years. That's a long time to have fun one night. I think many of the people that are knocking down these statues don't even have any idea what the statue is, what it means, who it is. When they knock down Grant, when they want to knock down Grant. But when they look at certain, now they're looking at Jesus Christ. They're looking at George Washington. They're looking at Abraham Lincoln. Thomas Jefferson. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Not as long as I'm here. As far as Democrats are concerned, I think they could care less whether or not it happens. And I think the American people get it. So we're going to have a very strong executive order, and it'll happen very quickly before the end of the week.
We have an election coming up in November. You have an election coming up on Sunday. Some of your critics who are politicians here in the United States have criticized this visit to the White House, saying it is tantamount to election interference because it shows a very close relationship between the United States and Poland at a time when you really need it. What do you say to those critics? And Mr. President, feel free to weigh in if you want to.
Szanowny panie, przede wszystkim.
Sir, first of all, let me also follow up on the question that you asked to President Donald Trump. I would like to thank you, Mr. President, because, among others, not a long time ago, the monument to General Tadeusz Kościuszko was devastated. That was the national hero of Poland, but also the national hero of the United States, who was fighting for the independence of the United States. He had great merits. He was also the commander of a Polish uprising, where he was fighting for the independence of Poland. He suffered heavy wounds in Poland fighting for the independence of our country, and for completely incomprehensible reasons to us, that monument was devastated devastated recently. And thank you so much that it has been renewed so fast. And that made it possible for me to lay flowers at that monument and pay tribute to the great soldier and a great commander. Thank you for that. That was outrageous for a big number of Polish people back in Poland, all of them probably, and for many, many Polish people living here also in the United States. Polish organizations here in the United States asked me and told me that they would renew that monument. I know that it has already been renewed by the United States. No assistance was needed, so I'm very grateful for that. That here the monument to Tadeusz Kościuszko stands near the White House, and he looks as he should look, which he has deserved for the merits he laid for the United States and for Poland. So thank you very much for that, Mr. President. And answering to your question, 2 months ago, at the very beginning of the pandemic of coronavirus, we had a lengthy conversation with President Donald Trump. The pandemic disrupted the plans of our cooperation, which we had. And back then, we made an arrangement with Mr. President that we would meet as soon as it would be possible. And this has been implemented. And the fact that this arrangement has been put into force is demonstrated by the visit today. I'm very grateful to Mr. President for inviting me here today. And together with Mr. President, we are implementing our presidential duties. The President is always in charge of his national interests. And this is the task of the President. When the President is acting in the international sphere, this is my sense, and I also know that also it is a very strong belief of President Donald Trump. The President is supposed to realize the interest of their country. So Mr. President Trump is realizing the interest of his own country, and I'm realizing the interest of Poland. So we are looking for a win-win situation where both parties are the winners, where both parties are able to implement their interests as part of the cooperation which we're implementing. This is the way we act, and in this very moment we're acting on a national level, on the state level. We are just fulfilling our obligations and duties as presidents of our countries, as those who are representing our nations and who want our societies to have as good lives as possible. Thank you very much.
Doing very well in Poland. He's doing a terrific job. The people of Poland think the world of him. And by the way, Mrs. Duda, who's a terrific woman who we've gotten to know also through our various travels and meetings. But they think the world of him, and I don't think he needs my help. I'm honored that this is a day that's, I guess, just before your election. I'm honored, but he will do very well with or without us. He's going to have a great success, and Poland is going to continue on. They're doing incredibly well as a country. Okay, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Best regards to Madam Melania, to your wife. Pan redaktor, bardzo proszę, telewizja.
Polish television. Good morning, Rafał Stańczyk, Polish television.
I want to ask about timing of that visit. President Andrzej Duda is the first president, the first international guest in the White House since the lockdown. And today there was a big military parade in Moscow. Can we combine those two facts? Is it kind of proof that that Poland is an important partner for America? Can we treat it that we can rely on America in Poland? Thank you.
Well, I think you can, and we also are working with Russia right now on an arms treaty, which is a very big thing, nuclear arms specifically, but we're working very much, and I think I can say, Mike, we're doing very well on that. We're two countries that want to see it happen, and we're working on other things with Russia. We have a very good relationship. We have our ambassador over there right now who'll be attending certain festivities, and that's a good thing, and I think that's frankly a good thing for Poland also. Likewise, we're going to be having very important dignitaries at your parade. You're going to be having a very big event soon, and we're going to be, I guess, in August, and we're going to have people representing the United States at a very high level, and that's very important to us also. Okay? Please.
Panie redaktor.
Sir, I have this feeling and sense that I'm conducting negotiations in Polish matters here in a very experienced and very tough politician, tough player, I can say, that is President Donald Trump, who is standing strongly and looking to the interest of his country and his citizens. What I'm doing here is I'm representing Polish interests here, and I'm not parading in Moscow. That is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. We will see you soon. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have been listening to the presidents of the United States and Poland. This was the first big visit by a foreign head of state, Carol, since the pandemic set in ahead of the Polish election and obviously ahead of the U.S. election coming up later this year.
Just a little context. Before the virus, Poland was among the fastest growing economies in the EU, but it is ranked number 38 among the U.S.'s top trading partners. So just a little perspective. An important relationship, according to certainly the president and the Polish president, but just a little perspective in terms of our global trading partners. All right, let's get a quick check on the world of business. Here is once again Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. Yes, it was a down day on Wall Street here. Stocks slumping as investors grew anxious at the resurgence in virus cases in many states will hamper the economic recovery. Today, the S&P 500 index declined by 81 points, down 2.6%, now at 3,050. That was a drop today of 2.6%. The Dow slumped 710 points, down 2.7%. NASDAQ was down 222 points, a decline of 2.2%. 10-year up 10-30 seconds with the yield 0.67%. Gold down 3.30 the ounce, down 0.2%, 17.65. Crude West Texas Intermediate slumping 5.6%, 38.12 a barrel. So again, recapping equities lower, S&P down 81, a drop of 2.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. As Jason and I have been saying throughout our broadcast, and we said it at the top of the show, that certainly what's on investors' minds, and again, many around the country, is the increased numbers in virus cases and hospitalizations. And there's a lot of stories. If you look at the most read on the Bloomberg, almost all of the top 10 have something to do with the virus. So let's get into it and talk about the virus, how the health community is continuing to deal with it. Lloyd Minor is a scientist, surgeon, and academic leader. He's also dean of the Stanford University School of Medicine. It's a position he has held since December of 2012. Also with us is David Entwistle, president and CEO of Stanford Healthcare, which in November opened its new 824,000 square foot state-of-the-art hospital. Its total bed count is now 605, total operating rooms to 87, so a huge facility. Both joining us on the phone from Stanford, California. Gentlemen, so nice to have you here with us. So I got to just ask you first, because of the virus surges, should some states and cities be considering slowing or reversing reopening plans? And Dr. Minor, let me start with you. How do you see it?
Thank you very much. It's good to be with you today. Certainly, we are seeing an increase in the number of COVID cases in many cities and locations across the United States. And I think that indicates that we need to continue to observe social distancing, the masking guidelines that have been rolled out in many communities. There's good evidence that masking helps to prevent the infection. It's going to be, I think, a location-by-location decision as to what additional measures are put in place. That is, whether or not we roll back from stage 2, where many places are today, to earlier stages. But the main thing is we've got to be more prudent about as we resume activities, as businesses, restaurants, department stores start to open. We've got to observe social distancing. We've got to use masks and do things that lessen the spread of the infection.
Well, and David, largely because all of this comes down to, or so much of this comes down to, essentially hospital capacity. So help us understand from the perspective of someone running a hospital what you worry about with this spike and what hospitals like yours are doing. And obviously you're not facing at the moment any sort of surge, but in your shoes or in the shoes of others running hospitals, what are they thinking about?
Well, no, I appreciate that opportunity. One of the things that we wanted to do, and certainly with any slowdown, which we did as the initial pandemic came on, is we started to see the numbers dip a bit. What we were most concerned about then is getting some of the folks back into the queue that actually needed some of the delayed surgeries and other things that were going on. We started with, which I think is a bit of a model building on what Dean Minor said, actually doing testing. So making sure that the population that we had within the hospital itself, our employees, our physicians, that we were free of the virus. And we actually tested over 12,000 employees and staff and saw less than a 0.3% of those staff actually had the virus. And so we knew that we were creating a safe environment. But I think it's important, despite being able to be there and be a resource for the community, we do also have to have capacity. And one of the things that we've done, despite opening back up
doing our elective surgeries, is creating still a capacity within the organization that's there and always available, because that really is the concern, is if we get another significant spike, well, we have the capacity to be able to treat, and we want to make sure that we're ready for that this time without having to shut everything down.
Well, Dean Miner, what have we learned? Here we are, Jason and I, have been working from home essentially. Jason went into the office a little bit this week, but he's back home. But here we are in, I think, week 14, week 15. What have we learned from the medical perspective about how to treat the virus, how to stay ahead of it, how to watch for either another spike? I mean, tell us what we've learned.
Thank you. I think we've learned several things. First is that this is a respiratory virus. The principal mode of transmission is from one person to the next through secretions, through mucus, through a cough. And there may be other modes of transmission as well, but the main danger is through direct contact with secretions of someone who is infected. And it is a highly infectious virus. We've certainly improved our ability to treat people who become ill. In the hospital, our own hospital, Stanford Hospital, we have been a pioneer in the studies of remdesivir that has been shown to be effective in improving the recovery rate and perhaps also in lowering the risk of mortality from the virus. We've been a part of those studies. We now have studies going on in the outpatient setting using antivirals at the time someone is diagnosed with the infection, before they become severely ill, using antivirals in a clinical trial setting in order to determine if there are therapies we can give to outpatients that reduce the severity of the disease and reduce the likelihood that people will need to be admitted to the hospital. We know that the tragedy in New York and in other places where hospitals and healthcare delivery systems became overwhelmed, the tragedy was that we as healthcare professionals were not able to provide the care we're capable of providing to patients who come to us because our facilities were overwhelmed. As long as we're not overwhelmed, as long as we're able to provide the type of high-quality intensive care that our hospital and so many others across the country are able to provide, as long as we don't become overwhelmed, I think we'll be able to take care of people throughout the course of this pandemic. But it's important to remember this is a serious infection in many people. In young people, it tends to be less severe, but in older people or people who have underlying medical conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, the infection can be very seriously. So we have to continue to take it seriously and to respond accordingly.
So, David, it feels like as a society we're faced with a few big moments right here. We're faced with this moment around racial justice, and we're talking a lot about that every day on this program, and I'm sure you guys are talking about it as well. It also seems like a moment where we are thinking about healthcare very, pun intended, holistically, and really rethinking it in terms of if we were to sort of design this from the ground up, how can we create a healthier community? How can we create a healthier society? Because we're going to be living with things like COVID-19 for a long time. You have the responsibility of building a healthcare system in that image. How do you do it?
For everyone, because equality is one of those big topics right now, obviously.
Well, and I'm glad they brought equality, because we know that there's disparities in the way that health is delivered, and we know that there's more that needs to be done in that perspective, and that's something certainly we're working on here at Stanford. There's a lot in that question that you just asked, I have to say, because if you think about, we have been trying for years to think about population health. How do we take care of populations? If we were doing this right, hopefully we'll keep them out of the hospital to begin with, because we'll be able to keep them healthy and keep them in a venue where they won't need to come here. Oftentimes within hospitals, we think about the care that we deliver is when there's a failure and when they need to receive treatment beyond what their own health will sustain. I think we have some real opportunities with this pandemic, which is certainly the first in my lifetime, and I hope the last. But I think as we rethink the way that we deliver healthcare, one is that we are we actually have individual stewardship and responsibility for our own health care, and I hope that we're taking advantage of those opportunities. But at the same time, we can re-envision the way that we provide care. And I'll just give you one example that I know you've heard of before, but it's transitioned here at Stanford, and that is just the use of our digital technology, both to look at data in predictive ways, but also digital technology in the way that we provide the care. And a lot of times being able to provide care to individuals at a place that's comfortable for them, and also avoiding, having to go out and have, in this case, potential access to other parts of the virus. And so there's so many things that I think that we can do now to re-envision the way that is. We're using digital technology internally, both predictive modeling, but also telehealth. One quick example, we've gone from roughly 2%, and we do a couple million clinic visits a year, 2% of those being done digitally, to at the height of the pandemic, 70% of those being delivered digitally. And so think about how we can not only mitigate some of the cost of healthcare, but also be able to provide care to individuals at their own sites. And so there's so much that we can do and think about, but certainly data will have a big place in that, and we want to use that data to actually drive our decisions.
And I have to say to both of you, Jason and I have spent a lot of time at Stanford. We've done several broadcasts for TV and radio at the business school. You guys are smack in the middle of so much innovation in terms of Silicon Valley and just the conversations about kind of where does the world go, always forward looking. So Dr. Miner, I do feel like the medical community, and maybe not yours specifically, but just overall, has been slower to innovate. I think it's a hard beast to move, right? So what will be kind of the innovative trends that maybe come out of the virus, and then just others that are going to come in the future that really will be part of the medical world?
Well, I'm pleased you brought that up, because if we look at the digital transformation of our lives, every sector of society and of the economy has been radically transformed by digital technologies, except for healthcare. Mm-hmm. I mean, think about the way we order goods and services, the way we perform financial transactions. They're radically different than they were 10 years ago. And yet healthcare, at least prior to 4 months ago, we were still using fax machines and still calling up on the phone to make an appointment in far too many cases. David mentioned this transformation that we've seen over an incredibly fast period of time towards telehealth. And I really have to do a big shout out to our IT team here that very rapidly scaled up for the type of transformation that David described, to have us do at one point 70% of our visits as virtual online visits. We should not lose the momentum that we've had to obtain during this crisis, because there is so much more we can do leveraging technology, not in a way that separates us as healthcare providers from our patients, but in ways that connects us in more meaningful ways with our patients, and also helps us to address some of the disparities that you brought up and that are so troubling to all of us.
Yeah, it's a really important conversation right now. And I'm so glad, Jason and I are both so glad that we had some time to catch up with both of you. And hopefully we can get you back soon again in the future. Sure. Dr. Lloyd Miner, he's Dean of the Stanford University School of Medicine, joining us on the phone from Stanford, California, along with David Entwistle, President and CEO at the Stanford Healthcare. And I feel like we could talk to them forever, because totally. With everything that's going on, Jason, and we're hearing lots of conversations. We hear, we talk with so many different members of the medical community. Everyone agrees it's been slow to change, but these guys, they're certainly involved in what's to come.
It's also a reminder that there are multiple constituencies here, right? We think about it just as patients and doctors, but it's much more complicated than that. And you alluded to that when you talk about slow to change, and you have the pharmaceutical industry, and you have the medical device industry, and you have, all these elements of it. There's an academic and research community embedded in there as well. So important to remember all those aspects.
Yeah, and a reminder that I think we're going to see a lot more technology working alongside humans to better situations, especially when it comes to healthcare. All right, let's get back to world and national news headlines. Back on over to Ed Baxter in San Francisco. Hey, Ed.
Wow, great interview, guys. I mean, you covered so much territory. They're absolutely awesome. The governors, and it all ties together here, too. The governors of the tri-state area have banded together to try and limit travel into New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut from virus hotspot states. Coalition of Cuomo, Murphy, and Lamont.
And you look at Arizona, you look at Texas, you look at all these states. You know what you see? You see an arrow going up because it was misguided.
Listen, it's time for personal responsibility. If you've been in a state that has a high infection rate, do the right thing.
If you come to Connecticut, you come to New York, you come to New Jersey, you come safely, and you follow the protocols, starting with a quarantine.
That is a 14-day quarantine. States on the list as of today, and they say it can change daily. Alabama, Arkansas, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Washington, Utah, and Texas. Now, in Houston, Texas,
they're full at 97%, and 1 out of 4 of the patients are COVID-19. So that is very alarming.
Yeah, those are ICU beds. Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia says they need more testing. President Donald Trump took time in a news conference with Poland's president that you heard here on Bloomberg Business Week, and he really took aim at Germany.
That Germany is paying Russia billions of dollars to purchase energy from Russia and through the pipeline. And I'm saying, what's that all about? You're spending billions of dollars to Russia, then we're supposed to defend you from Russia.
He says troops will be coming out of Germany to elsewhere, including Poland. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. NJIT faculty mentored Christoph Camacho when he was a student, helping him co-found a startup and patent a device that uses drone technology for reforestation and to collect valuable data for land management.
I founded Paratrees back in 2016, taking what I learned from my research at NJIT and migrating it to a startup. Our technology is to really enhance land management operations, so we work very closely with land management companies. So we have a drone that performs precision reforestation, and we do storm damage assessment, having access to drones that can collect data so it's much faster. And what is more important, we help them drive management decisions. NJIT has been there every step of the way, going full force with my company.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
In-depth analysis. What if the world listened more? Maybe it could become a better place. Because when we really listen, we start to notice things that don't sound quite right. They might not seem obvious at first, but listen closely and they stand out like a sore plum. And the more we listen, the more we learn. Our ears help us find better solutions. And things can change from this to something a little more like this. The new Honda Jazz is a hybrid. Honda, the power of dreams.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
How do you keep track of all your favorite stations and podcasts? Easy. You add them to your favorites list. Just find the audio you want to bookmark and tap the heart icon. Then, whenever you want to browse your favorites, you'll find everything under the Favorites tab.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Looking for your daily fix of NFL news and analysis?
In that. So we had to blow it up and do Super Bowl predictions instead.
Look no further than the Pick 6 podcast, where CBS sports writer Will Brinson gets you up to speed with what's trending in the NFL that day, so that you're always in the know.
Yeah, it's pretty revealing of Brinson's methodology for predictions. When he gets mad at people for predicting good teams are going to win the Super Bowl or good players are going to win major awards, that's how you wind up.
Search Pick 6 on TuneIn to listen.
How do hockey fans know what day it is? Just turn on the Locked on NHL podcast, where a rotating cast of hockey experts guide you through the week with a different theme show for every day. From big news Monday to recap Friday.
But we've got a couple of news items that are noteworthy in the NHL in the last week, one of which is below the NHL, and we'll bring that up first. So the AHL announced officially, this has been speculated for weeks and weeks, but the AHL...
Search Locked on NHL on TuneIn to listen. Buckle up, race fans.
NASCAR is back in the driver's seat.
And you can cut straight to the action here.
With the Performance Racing Network on TuneIn, you can hear PRN's live coverage of some of this year's top events.
As NASCAR's top drivers, Kevin Harvick,
Clint Boyer, and more get back on the track.
Search Performance Racing Network to listen and see upcoming races.
Trey Wingo here from ESPN's Golic and Wingo. Every morning, Mike Golic Jr., and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golic and Wingo and start listening today.
Are you fully informed on the NBA? On the NBA Hangtime podcast, veteran sports writers Sekou Smith and John Schumann analyze the latest NBA news, storylines, and discussions with guests from around the basketball universe.
Isaiah Thomas joined us here on the Hangtime podcast. Isaiah, good morning.
Everybody's doing well. As you know, my daughter tested positive.
Search NBA Hangtime on TuneIn to listen.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Number of headlines to pass along from the Bloomberg Professional Service. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says a massive coronavirus outbreak is sweeping his state. Today, there was word that the Houston ICU beds are at 97% of capacity. Abbott did push to reopen Texas back in May. General Motors will eliminate the third shift at its SUV plant in Spring Hill, Tennessee, leading to the dismissal of 680 workers. Ally Financial and Cardholder Management Services have announced they have mutually agreed to terminate their merger agreement. And KB Home reported orders for the second quarter that missed expectations. KBH shares that they are down now by almost 8%. It was a down day on Wall Street today, a retreat for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ on concerns about rising coronavirus cases. S&P down 81, a drop of 2.6%. The Dow slumped 710, down 2.7%. NASDAQ down 222. That was a drop of 2.2%. 10-year up 10/30 seconds with a yield of 0.67%. Gold down 0.3%, lower by $6 the ounce at $17.62. West Texas Intermediate crude down 5.9%, $37.99 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. Well, we've talked a lot about the virus today, understandably. In fact, we just talked with the Dean of Stanford University School of Medicine and the Presidency of Stanford Healthcare about what's going on, certainly what they're seeing when it comes to the virus. If you look globally, check out Brazil, because the cases there not slowing down. Between late May and mid-June, the country galloping past Spain, Italy, and the UK in total fatalities, which now exceed about 51,000. It's the second highest toll after the U.S. It is extreme. And this is in a story that's in the magazine this week, written by Bloomberg News Sao Paulo Bureau Chief Julia Leite, and she joins us from Sao Paulo, along with Bloomberg Business Week editor Joel Weber from Brooklyn. And Joel, you know, of course, understandably here in the U.S., we focus so much on what's going on around the country, but you really got to look at what's happening globally, and especially what's happening in Brazil.
Yeah, that's right, Carol. So when we kind of approached this story, we just really
started to witness a couple weeks ago how everything was going wrong in Brazil. And like, admittedly, it's not like all is going well here domestically either. And one of the things, though, that really stood out for us was that at least here there are some forces for good, and we've seen how quarantines can be effective. What we've really seen in Brazil is a lack of any sort of like federal level countrywide initiative to shut this down. A populist president who actually maybe looks President Trump look more with it. And that whole climate and just lack of health infrastructure, it really starts to look like a perfect storm. And in many ways, we're thinking of it at the magazine, at least, as almost like what the worst case scenario might look like. And of course, the person who brought that all together for us was Julia, who's on the ground in Sao Paulo. Julia, when you guys set out to do this story and your reporting, how did you guys approach telling a bigger story about Brazil?
I think we're a huge country, and one of the first things we did, and we talked to you very early about, was we needed to get somebody on the ground in the north or northeast, where we're really seeing, things get out of hand very quickly. And when you look at the population now, the amount of people that have antibodies, so the amount of people that have been exposed is like 20%. So it has circulated like crazy, right? Because it's places that you can't really social distance, right? People already lived too close to each other. You don't have savings. The government money helps, of course, but they can't not work. And so you've seen it spread much more quickly there than you've seen, for example, in Sao Paulo, right, where we have been in quarantine for a little over 2 months, and it has slowed down things quite a bit. We're still seeing a huge number of cases, but it has kind of been more or less under control.
And talk about the government's response here, Julia, because clearly that's something, as Joel rightly pointed out, that I feel like everyone's watching, especially here in the United States, as we've had, to say the least, an uneven response federally and state by state. And we've also seen other examples of this across the other parts of the world. The president of the country not getting great reviews here.
Right. I think even more than just a lack of coordination, like every state was doing what they needed to do and not really talking to anyone else about it, or not, it wasn't a coordinated approach, but more than that, it was a very conflict-filled relationship, right? What we saw from the start is these conflicts and clashes, very public clashes between President Bolsonaro and the governors, right? You've had them screaming at each other kind of on a meeting, and he went on TV and told them to abandon these scorched earth techniques of shutting everything down and let's give everyone back to work, telling them they needed to be out on the streets and hearing what the people needed, right, which is to get everybody back to work, because people can't really afford to just stay home and wait it out. It has been very fraught, the relationship, and it has kind of made the crisis worse, it seems.
Another element that I think is distinguishing Brazil, and this is sort of why it provides a little glimpse of a future, guys, is that this is the Southern Hemisphere. It's winter there, and between that and then its ability to sort of go upriver and travel in such environments that are people have to work for economic reasons, and that has also helped facilitate transmission. That is one of the reasons that I think it's a really interesting place to watch. And obviously, domestically, there's a lot of things to watch right now too. But I think we're all very curious about what this looks like in a couple months when we're looking at winter and what spread will look like then. And Julia, I'm curious how much of that conversation is happening domestically among Brazilians.
No, for sure. The winter is looming. It's not quite yet here yet. In most of the country, it's still pretty warm, but it is going to be here soon. And I think especially the combination of that and what you were saying, moving inland, right, and moving into the countryside where they already don't have hospital beds to deal with it, right? And they have less and less infrastructure the deeper into the country you go. And we are reopening the economy, right? Because it's been a couple months and pressure has grown. So governors are now reopening. And the places that have reopened, you are seeing a spike in cases, right? I think the health secretary in Rio de Janeiro who quit after a couple of days said, yes, we know cases will spike, but we are running out of money to even pay doctors. So there is no other option. We have to reopen, and we'll have to deal with that.
Well, and I just have to say that I feel like the emerging markets has been something we've been talking about increasingly when it comes to the virus. Carmen Reinhart even just talking from the World Bank this week, obviously looking at it from a human toll and the ability to fight it, but also the economic toll. So certainly a really, really important story and long from being over. Julia, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Julia Leite, she's Sao Paulo Bureau Chief, joining us on the phone from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Joel Weber, of course, our editor at Bloomberg Business Week, on the remote line from Brooklyn. And check out that story. It'll be in the magazine this week. But those emerging markets, Jason, we were just talking with, two prominent folks in Stanford, at the Stanford Medical School and Health System, and they're on the cutting edge and still struggling with things. And you think about emerging markets and the toll, it just kind of breaks my heart.
Well, in my conversation this morning with Bruce Flatt, one of the things he said was, this is a global crisis. That's one of the things that's really different here. All right. For those of you listening in New York and San Francisco, watching on YouTube, Bloomberg Business Week continues. If you're listening on 99.1 in D.C., sound on with our man Kevin Surley. That is coming up next. Stick with us. We're going to be talking about diversity on Wall Street. This is Bloomberg.
At Honda, we've never looked to other car companies for inspiration. No, it's not a matter of an inflated ego. We just prefer listening to what people really need. For example, the new Honda Jazz Hybrid doesn't have the expected 6 airbags. It has 10, including one that prevents the driver and passenger from colliding with each other. And because we also listen to our conscience, all our safety features come as standard. No charge. Honda, the power of dreams.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Stay close to College Hoops Conversation with College Basketball Talk Podcast from NBC Sports. Join Rob Dowster and Bobby Reagan for weekly recaps of what's happening in every conference. Nostalgic flashbacks to classic games and big picture discussions of the future of the sport.
Always knew was a legend, and you always knew was one of the great coaches because everyone always told you how great this coach was. But he never really reached point of either.
Search College Basketball Talk on TuneIn to listen.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down and discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Ready to talk brass tacks on what's happening in Major League Baseball? Turn to the Effectively Wild podcast from Fangraphs for daily statistics, analysis, and commentary.
One team will say, yeah, we're going to keep paying minor leaguers their stipend, and another team will say, we're going to extend the stipend through this month, and then another team will say, nope, we're cutting them off. So are extending it at least through August, which would basically be the end of the minor league regular season.
Search Effectively Wild on TuneIn to listen.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
This is Darren Waller. Good to have you. Yes, sir. It's good to be here. Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge. Thanks for having me, brother. Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Middle of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Among the companies on with earnings after the bell, KB Home. It reported orders for the second quarter that missed expectations, sending shares sliding and signaling it could be a bumpy road as home builders recover from the pandemic. KB shares down now by 8%. It reported orders for the second quarter that missed expectations as home builders recover. The company's orders for the quarter fell to 1,758 from 4,064 a year earlier. Analysts were expecting 3,450. Company sales also missed estimates again. KB Home down now by about 8%. It was a down day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining as investors grew anxious that the resurgence in virus cases in multiple states will hamper the economic recovery. Yields on treasuries fell. The dollar strengthened. The 10-year, the yield there, 0.67%, up 10/30 seconds. S&P down 81, lower by 2.6%. The Dow dropped 710, down 2.7%, was down 3.3% at the worst level of the session. NASDAQ tumbled 222 points, lower by 2.2%. Gold, little changed. $17.61 the ounce right now. West Texas Intermediate crude down 5.7%, $38.07 a barrel. One of the big questions for economists and investors is just how willing consumers are to keep spending as economies reopen around the country. Michelle Meyer is head of U.S. economics at Bank of America Securities.
There's clearly a desire to re-engage. That said, we're now starting to see very early evidence that things are leveling off, whether you look at it in terms of some of the high-frequency data around consumer spending or small business openings from a variety of alternative data sources as well. Things are starting to kind of peak out, particularly in the states that are further along in the reopening process.
Detroit automakers dominated J.D. Power's marquee study of new vehicle quality for the first time, with Fiat Chrysler's Dodge becoming the first domestic brand to lead the rankings in 34 years. Today, Fiat Chrysler dropped 4.5%, General Motors shares down 3.7%, Ford tumbled 3.3%. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 81, a drop of 2.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Thank you very much, Charlie Pellet. I got to say, I'm eager to get to our next guest. I've been doing a bunch of reading, Jason, about her. She began her job on March 2nd as president of the Center for Talent Innovation. It's a 15-year-old nonprofit think tank. It's dedicated to diversity and inclusion in the workplace. She spent more than a decade on Wall Street, including at Bank of America Merrill Lynch, where she led global equity asset management. She is also co-chair of the Human Rights Campaign's National Business Advisory Council, and it's a forum of diversity leaders from Fortune 500 companies. She's also founding executive member of Open Finance. It's a consortium of LGBTQ leaders advancing inclusion across Wall Street. I feel like, Linnea Irvin, you represent so much of the conversations that we've been having about the last 14, 15 weeks, and certainly in the last month. She joins us on the phone from New York City. Welcome to Bloomberg.
Thank you for having me.
I have to say, talk about timing. You're, I think, roughly, 4 months in on your job. We've been dealing with the virus.